Welcome back to Coin Sense and Nonsense. Today, it's a full stack video of my Morgan Dollar collection. And here it is. So, when I was a little kid, my grandfather gave me this one. And this is a 1921 S. And it's fairly common. Um, I think I probably even might have polished it once or twice when I was a kid with the silver cloth. I don't recall. Probably about the same time I polished my Columbian Exposition commemorative $half. Don't. Anyway, I think I was 8 or 10. And that's part of the reason that I only got this. And I got this keychain. This was 1890. And I think it's a plain date, if I'm not mistaken. And so, yeah, no, mint mark. So, my grandfather had some cool coins, but my sister was older, and so she got all the good stuff there. She got all the silver and things like that. So, I was kind of late to the party for Morgans. I had just these two, and I like them, but I just never really got into them. But then I started seeing people with the toned ones and the really high-grade ones, and so slowly but surely, I've been able to to acquire some Morgan dollars, and so been able to get some good deals at my semi-local coin shop, and some of these are, fairly limited. They're not like ultimate key dates or anything like that, but things like this aren't too highly minted. I think maybe 2 or 3 million, something like that. So condition not too bad. So I've got 66 now, and I've even got some Carson cities. So if you're interested, I'll show them off here. I'll set up the tripod, and I won't show all of them. I don't think everybody wants to see 66 of them. But I'll give you the highlights. And then there's a couple that have potential for varieties and just kind of look pretty cool under the scope. So we'll check them out. All right, so may as well start off with the big guns here. This is the Carson City 1878. So of all the ones that I have, I think this one's probably the most valuable. It's not in the best condition, but for the Carson Cities, they don't really need to still be valuable. I mean, of course, you'd want it to be in nicer shape. So I do have two of the Carson City, and I was able to get a good deal on these. So this one, the condition also not so great, but still happy to have Carson City. So the mintage on these is 2,212,000. So very cool. So that is the lowest mintage of all the ones that I have. So it's not the key date of the series, but it's like a semi-key date. Next. All right, so next up we've got the 1881 O. And this one, you can see I've got a CL there. I think this one's been cleaned. You can see a lot of gunk in the crevices. It's something I wanted to show you on the scope, how you can tell if something's been dipped or not. So, yeah, so this would have been a nice coin. There's only 5,708,000 of these minted, something like that. And the condition wouldn't have been too bad, probably if they would have just left it alone. I'm sure it was gunky looking, but better to do that than have it look cleaned. So, so here's actually this one I don't think has been cleaned, although it's got a little bit of schmutz there. So this is the S, 1881 S. There's many more of these minted, so let's see what else is next on a low mintage here. Alright, so 1884 S. This one, I don't know. It's got some streaks to it, so I think this one's definitely been cleaned. Well, I think and definitely used in the same sentence. What's going on? Anyway, there's your S. It's got kind of a muted look to it. So, and I can see in the crevices on this one too that there's some junk. So, been cleaned, but the price was right. I think I paid $24 or something like that for it. So, not too bad. Alright, here's another fairly high minted coin. There's like 20 million of these. But the interesting thing, 1887 has a cool error. This one unfortunately doesn't have it, but we'll do a closer up look on the scope. 1887 over 6 is the thing to look for. So this one's in not too bad a shape. So again, I think I got these for this for in the $20 range, 20 something, 24, 22. Alright, so next up in chronological order and of coolness in my collection is this one. This is a 1890 Carson City. So that is cool. Condition not the greatest, but not too bad. Oh, and did I say 2,309,041 minted? Alright, here's another fairly common one, but it's in decent condition for the price I paid. So 1885, and it's the O, so but decent sheen. Same with 1886. This one, not any kind of special date or anything, but decent condition. Alright, here's 1883 O. Also not a special date, but decent condition. I like it. It's got a little bit of staining or toning at the base there at the bottom. So, not bad. Alright, next up, 1891. And it's an S. So, also decent condition. Got some marks, but overall, not bad. Not been cleaned or anything, so very cool. Oh yeah, 5,296,000 on these. Alright, so condition, not the greatest on this, but only 4,900,000 of these minted. 1896 O. Alright, so now we're talking some rarity and some decent quality here. So 1897 plain date. And decent condition, no cleaning on this one, and 2,800,000 is the mintage on this one, so that is nice. 2,822,000 to be exact. Alright, so next up, 1898. And it's an O, and it's almost proof-like. Look at that. That is kind of neat. So there's only, 4,440,000 of these minted. And the obverse isn't really proof-like, but that's kind of cool. So I'll check out the varieties on this one. Alright, so next up, this one's also not high quality, but it's kind of an interesting story. The 1901, and this is a plain date, and I guess there's some counterfeiting going on with these. Not that it's a super highly sought after one, but I guess they obliterate the mint mark just to make it a 1901 plain date. So This one's pretty worn, so there is a DDR to check for as well. So we'll take a closer look on the scope for that. All right, so nothing special mintage wise about this one, but it's decent condition. 1902. There's the O. Not bad. All right, second to last year in the series, ends in 1904. Well, actually, not really. They go on in 1921, but we'll talk about that. So this one is the plain date. And yeah, so what did I say? 4,652,000 of these minted. So decent shape. And then I didn't put this. Ooh, I didn't put it in a flip. It's damaged. There's some chunks out of it here. Probably got caught up in a slot machine or something. That's the one thing I do remember going to Vegas and getting a rack of dollars. And boy, do I wish I could have kept some. So 1904S, not in the greatest condition, but this is a low mintage one. This is 2,304,000 minted of these. So very cool. So this was the last year before they, when they stopped production for a while. And then they resumed for the 1921 dollar, and let's talk about that. So the mint had been producing so many coins because they had to make sure there was enough in the vaults to satisfy the demand in case people brought their silver certificates in. There used to be a payable on demand $1 in silver, so they had to have enough of the silver in the vaults in case there were like a large rush of people saying, "I brought my silver." Well, silver dollars are really mainly popular in the West, not so much in the East. And towards the end of the towards the end of the 1800s and the early 1900s, they realized they had a lot in storage. So that's why in 1904 they stopped production. Well, they passed something called the Pittman Act, and that called for the melting of over 200 million silver dollars. And so that kind of reduced the supply. They melted it down, and a lot of it was shipped to Great Britain and ultimately ended up in India, which is kind of a weird story. This is all during wartime. And it's because also to kind of help manipulate the silver and gold prices. Those were the early times of manipulation and whatnot. So anyway, Pittman Act, they reduced the number, and also a lot of these were just still kept away in vaults. Well, there ended up being a bit of a demand, and then they realized that they better kind of ramp up production. So the 1921 Morgan dollar came to be. And it's kind of a crumb bum design. What happened, the geniuses too, in 1910, they destroyed they destroyed the die, the master die for the Morgan dollar. So they had to recreate it, and they did it from the 1878 version, I guess. And they did a crummy job of it. So it's kind of weak. There's not really a lot of well-struck 1921 dollars. And then, of course, they did the peace dollar after that. So, but these were made. They made a crap ton of these, and actually, 1921 was the first year of the Denver mint getting into the process, and the mint marks are so darn small. The D and the S mint marks are both very, very tiny. So anyway, it's a bit of a little history on those. So let's look at a few a little closer up. Oh, actually, let me just finish up too on the story on these. So 1898 O, and then the 1903 O, and the 1904 O were all minted and then mostly stored away. And then they thought a lot were melted. So the 1903 O in particular was one where it was in super, super short supply initially, and it was thought to be a rarity, so the prices were really high. Well, in 1962, they found there was a whole bunch stored away in a vault, and they started to get released into circulation, and so the prices plummeted on some of them. But anyway, that's another little adjunct to the weird Morgan dollar story. All right, so let's check out a couple under the scope here. May as well start off with one of my faves here. This is the 1878 Carson City. And unfortunately, I don't have any of the die varieties on this one, but I do want to point out that this is the 1878 style reverse, and we'll deal with that in a moment here. I've got an 1879 with a die variety. And speaking of die varieties, in Morgan dollars, the system for keeping track of those was developed by Van Allen and Malice, and so they call them the VAM system or whatever. So this one, although it doesn't have any true varieties, it does have some machine doubling. It's nothing to get too excited about, but you can kind of see it on the E, and a little bit, I think, on the wing. So in 1879, they switched to this style reverse, the Type C. You can see that feather is closer to the tip of the leaf, or to the leaf itself. And so this is the 1879 S. And then here's a much crummier 1879 S with the Type B reverse. The other one is the Type C. Here you can see the old style. It doesn't kind of reach all the way up. So, cool. There's no like major premium difference though. Well, since I didn't explain it so well, here it is. Alright, and this is the 1889, and it's not really legit, but I think it's the precursor to VAM 19A. There's a die break on the eagle's wing, and that might be like the beginning of it here. So that's kind of cool. And that's what it would look like when it's legit. Alright, so this is my 1890 Carson City, and it does have a repunch date, which is cool. I finally got something, but it's really nothing because most of them have the repunch date, so boo-hoo. But you can see evidence of the old one there. So yeah. 1890 Carson City does have a famous VAM to check for called the tail bar. I'll show you where that is. So unfortunately this isn't the tail bar variety, but when there is one, there's a die gouge right there, and they call it the tail bar. Alright, here's 1896, and I think this is a repunch date. I haven't seen this one listed, but I haven't really investigated further either. Alright, so here's that 1898 O, and this is like proof-like reverse. And you can kind of see some of the finish is a little bit different and almost a bit of a cameo. But one thing I noticed, some of the dies, when they are polished like that, there are scratches, and it gives you the impression that it's been cleaned, but it's really, you can kind of tell if you look at the devices instead of the fields to see if there's scratches there as well. And there's another example I have here coming up where at first I thought it was cleaned, and it turns out it's probably just over polished. And here's the one we just looked at, just for flashbacks there. You can kind of see it is a little bit proof-like. And I think the way that they determine proof-like is if they can read, there's got to be a certain distance that they can read lettering in the reflection. And that's what deep mirror proof-like. There's a distinction between proof-like and DMPO. But the point about this is there's so many different combinations. This has got a proof-like reverse, but the obverse is just kind of standard. So yeah, there can be so many different die combinations, and that's what collectors go nuts. Alright, coming down the home stretch here is the 21D. This is the first one with the Denver mint mark. It's much smaller mint mark than had been used on previous years, so these were the 21 restarts. Same with the S. This is the 21S, and it's so small compared to the others. There's one of the others. Alright, and so after the Morgan dollars were done in 1921, and they minted a crap ton of those, like I say, peace dollars came along. They did 1921 through, I don't know, 35, I think. I forget exactly. Sorry, we're not doing a peace dollar discussion here. But the point is, they ceased production of silver dollars for a while again. And then in 1965, they decided to restart silver dollars, and they were going to use at first they were going to use the Morgan design, but then they ultimately decided to go with the peace dollar design, and so they minted some in 1965, but backdated them to 1964. But before they could be released, the silver price went up so much that the coins were worth more than $1 so in silver value. So that wasn't going to work out so well. So they melted all the 1964 peace dollars. So there were some minted, but they were supposedly all melted. I don't know if some survived. So fill me in the comments if you know better than I do. I don't really know the history of peace dollars and all that. They did find some 1964 Morgan. They found like a prototype in a vault somewhere, so that's kind of interesting. So then later on, we got the Ike, and so they did make some silver Ikes, but the ones mainly for circulation were clad. So very, very cool. So I hope you enjoyed checking out this Morgan Dollar extravaganza. Thanks so much for watching. Point Sense and Nonsense. And until next time, bye.